Masechet Zevahim Daf Samach He Amud Aleph, 14 lines down by the Gemara. Tenu Rabbanan, Vehikri Vor, the Pasuk, the Kohen shall bring it to the Mizbeach. Matula is the Torah talking about. The fish number one, it says, Vehikri Minatorim Omim Bnei Hayvna. When he brings from the birds, mentions birds plural, doves or pigeons. Yachol Hamed Nadev Off, Lo Yivhot Mishne Pirdin. Therefore, you would think that someone who donates a bird. Maybe he has to bring two minimum. Tamura, the person is vehikrivo, singular. He should bring it. I feel perda hatev even bring one bird. Where it says, Elam mizbeach matlumar kohen. So once it's to mizbeach, why mention the kohen again? Likvu ala kohen teacher, they have to specify a kohen who should do milika on it. Sheyachol baladinu, because you would have thought logically, why may I not need a kohen? Uma ben son shekaval if for a sheep where the Torah says you have to do it in the north. Lo kavala kohen, even a non-kohen can do it. All shlo kavala zefan, so a Berber you could do it anywhere in the Hatzer. And then shlo kohen, therefore you for sure don't need a kohen. Now, no, they've also said a kohen, likbuag the kohen teaches you must have a kohen do milika. Whereas Yachal maybe you do milika with a knife versus his fingernail. But you know, logically, you would think so. Uma im shahita shlo kavala kohen. Slaughter regular shahita of an animal. You could use even a non-kohen. Kavala kli, you still could use like a knife. Milika she kavala kohen. So milika where you do need a kohen, in a din she kavala kli. So for sure you need a kli. For sure you need a knife. Uma the pasuk says ha kohen umalak the kohen shadu milika, which is with his finger. Amar Akiva v'chita aleh l'tcha shezar karev l'bavim zeach. One second, do you actually think that the non-Kohen can approach the Mizbeach to do Milika? Ela matlu mar v'Kohen, so what's he use the pasuk for? Should the Milika ba'atzmot shall Kohen to be done with the actual body of the Kohen, meaning his nail. Where it says, Yachol yon kilenna ben l'mal ben l'mat, maybe you think you can do Milika to the bird, whether it's above the red line in the middle of the Mizbeach or below. Ulamar umalak v'hektir, burning, ma hektira b'rosh Mizbeach, af Milika, which is burning on top, so to the Milika on top. Mar says, umalak, he does Milika. Shetehim Milika mimul orif. It has to be done at the back of the neck. I talk about a lot of who says the neck. Or in a from the throat. Medina, why would you think throat? Neymar Kanu Malak mentions the Milika. Medina Malak also mentions the Milika by the bird. Maladan Mimul or by the hatat, it's by the neck. Afkan will also by the hatat by the neck. Imaladan Malik animal deal about 1 second. There's a difference. By the case of the hatat, we don't decapitate the whole thing, like you mentioned in the Mishnah. Afkan looking maybe also by the Ola, you don't decapitate it. The mother says umalak vehektir, cut and burn. Ma haktira harosh la'atzmo v'hagufas, which is like you burn it separately, the head and the body. Af milika harosh la'atzmo v'hagufas, so cutting, you decapitate the head completely from the body. How do you know that you burn it separately in the first place? Shneimar, vehektir oto, you shall burn it. Therefore, it's talking about the burning of the bird body. How I mentioned again burning of the beach. It's referring to separately burning the body, the head. Sorry. Okay. Squeeze of the blood. All of it. I'll give it back on the wall and back teaching you vlog kira kevish down on the right. Vlog kira hacham the hechal. Which wall in the back? The upper half. So, Kirachim is referring to the bottom half. They didn't know, and logically, Kavachomer, you would think that it would be referring to the lower one. Just like in the case of an animal where the blood is applied to the above the red line, and the olah is below. Of Shahtatamata, so the off where the hatat is below, and the inshallah so also the olah should be below. Versus Tamala inside the mouth. Now, would you think that after he burns the head, he goes back to squeeze the blood? Must be the fact that told me this order to teach you the burning is done on top. The squeezing out is done also on top. Get that out. He would go to the ram, turn to the right. He comes to the southeast corner of the Beach. Do milika by the back of the neck, umavdil and decapitate, said the minha al kirbech, and then you squeeze out the blood on the side of the wall of the mizbeach. If you did so by squeezing even amma below him, where he's standing, still kasher because it's still in the upper half of the mizbeach. We've done the actual tippity top mizbeach, not the wall. Maybe now what's the difference? Why do they disagree? They both say. The difference is whether or not you make the ledge, the fire by the ledge, if that's considered a difference. Meaning, according to Tanakh, it's mutar to make a fire for the top of the ledge, and that's why you could squeeze out the blood below the ledge. According to the Rabbi Hanina Lazar, Ben Yaakov says no, you can't make the fire on the ledge, and therefore the burning has to be burnt on the top, and the blood has to be done on top. Okay. Next part of Mishnah Ba'ala Laguf we came back to the body of the bird. He removes the crop, the feathers, and the insides that come with it. He removes the mur'ah. In effect, that's referring to the crop. You might think you should cut it out with a knife. With the feathers, you take the feathers with it. Mar says, Abba Yosef ben Hanamar, he says, Notlad and Notlad kum kibahema in. He takes the crop and takes the bird's gizzard, like the secondary belly. The Bere Yeshmantana, Benosata with the feathers, Benotashila with the feathers only, but not anything else. Called Drabas Hakim Kimin Arba, he cuts like a hole, a circular hole around it, just to remove the crop and the feathers with it. Next part of the Mishnah. She saw below you tear open if you let's say you tore open the body but you did not rip it in half, it's kasher. She saw you shall tear it, and she saw you have to tear it by hand, not with a vessel. The same way we bring a proof from Shemoshon that Shishon ripped the lion in half with his hands. Next, lo asir the mur'ah, you do not remove if you forgot to remove the crop, or if you did decapitate it, it's sorry. If you did not remove the crop, it's kasher. But if you decapitated it by the hatat, or if you did not decapitate it by the Allah, it's pasul. Against Rabbi Shimon. Then what it says, Amar Rabbi Elazar B'Kri Shimon. I heard that you actually do decapitate by the hatat, and it's kasher. Gemara says, "My benai, what's the difference? The difference between them is whether or not you have to squeeze the blood is required for a hatat. Tanakama savar mitzvah hatat me'akev. Tanakama holds it is required. Ve'cheva the mitzvah dam me'akev, and just like the blood squeezing is required. Ka'avin ma'aseh olah hatat therefore, you're seemingly doing the entire procedure the same by olab to like the hatat, which makes it pasul. It's not essential, and therefore, if you just separate it, you just don't squeeze out the blood on the hatech. And therefore, by cutting extra, you're just cutting extra. It's not like you're copying the other service, and that's why it's still kasher. Rav Amar sheheya besiman sheni be'ot ikbenaz. No, there's another difference to explain the machloket between the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon. Whether or not if it's an issue to wait between cutting the first pipe and the second pipe. So is delaying a part of the slaughtering considered a delay or not? In regard to shechita, definitely you have to do it. Over here, regarding the bird, between cutting the first pipe and the second pipe is not considered stopping, does not make it not milika. Tanakama savar sheyeh b'siman sheni be'ot ha'ov lo ma'akev. Tanakama holds that delaying the second one is not making a pasul. Even though delaying it when doing milaka, he's still doing the entire procedure of the olah, which would make it pasul by the hatat. The Rabbi Shimon Savar, he says Rabbi Shimon holds that delaying is pasul. Since he's delaying it, he's just cutting flesh, and therefore, since it's not identical, it is kasher. Abai Mara says a different explanation. The difference is whether or not you hold, whether or not the skin around the flesh, around the neck, is considered required for the hatat. And this enters the following machloket. One says that the difference between Tanaim is whether or not cutting the second pipe is considered delay and therefore makes it pasul. But the second one holds whether or not cutting the extra flesh by the neck of the bird is required. One second. That in general we do require for the flesh to be cut around or after one pipe, meaning is it always required or just over here it's not? Mara says, yes, but Tanabert says, how do you do you cut through the cord of the spine and the neck bone and you cut through the most part through the front of the bird's neck. Until you reach either the windpipe or the food pipe. Once you reach one of them, you cut one of it or majority of it, and also the flesh around it. In the case of Allah, you cut through both of them or majority of both. Amru Kamei mentioned this in front of Jeremiah. Amar, he said, Lo Shemilahu Hadam Rabbi Shmuel Medakim Mishmul Bizarre Vitat Mishmul Rabbi Rabbi Shmuel. You didn't hear what this rabbi said? That what? Omer he had Rabbi Shmuel Mishmati Hadata Open Mishmulin. He said, I heard that regarding the bird hatat, you can decapitate. Umay lo yavdil. So why does the Torah say don't separate if you're allowed to? Umar says, in tzarich that you're not required, but if you do it, it's kasher. אמר לב אחד ברד רבה לב אשי אלא מעתה גבי בור דקטיב לא ויחסנו הכנמי דאין צריך לחזות. One second. If it says don't do it, and you're saying, oh, it means not required. So does that mean anywhere it says you don't need to do it, you don't do it means not required? So he brings the case like of a pit. If someone digs a pit in public property, it says you should cover it. Oh, you don't have to recover it if you don't want to. What does that mean? Of course you have to. How can you not say that it's referring to uh not decapitating? The Gemara says, "Ha chiyashta," you can't compare. Hatam kevin dekti bala boishlim. Over there, since it says that if you're responsible for the pit and therefore you have to pay. Iluha kudirama lahasi. Maybe that's why you're required to cover it. Abahacha michti kiva hikrivu. Well, here when it says bringing the bird for the korban, halaka ketuv ben hachatat la'of la'adar la'of. It makes a difference between the way a bird is brought and the way a bird Allah is brought. La'adat la'of. And teaches you that the bird both are cut and the Allah both are cut and the hatat one's cut. This why I mentions again, don't separate it. Shmamina in today means you don't have to separate it, but if you do, it's a kasher. Next part of the Mishnah, mitzad dam haguf, you squeeze out the blood of the body. If you don't, it's kasher. Number 9, Allah, regarding Allah, afvish mitzad dam haguf, lo mitzad dam harosh. Even if you squeeze out the blood of the body, but you don't squeeze out the head, yachol mitzad dam harosh, lo mitzad dam haguf. You might think that if you did only the head, not the body, well, no matter who, therefore, Tafsir mentions it teach you only that way than Allah. But if you do the opposite, meaning if you only squeeze out the head, not the body, it's pasul. How do I know that? How do we know that only if I squeeze at the body and not the head, it's kasher, but if I only squeeze the head and not the body, it's pasul? When I said the Maravina, no, it makes sense. What would be something that you would exclude versus include? I would include kasher if you squeeze out most of the blood in the bird, which would be in the body. It has 75% of blood, and the head has 25% of blood. In that case, you squeeze most of the blood through the body, kasher. If you only squeeze out the head of 25% of blood, that's not enough. And therefore, that would be the case of pasul.